Hi and welcome to the Leaders in Sustainability podcast. I think we're on episode 5 now, and today I've got Gemma Butler joining me. Hi Gemma.
Hey, nice to meet you again.
Yeah, nice to see you. So Gemma, you are the Marketing Director at the Chartered Institute of Marketing. You're also the co-author of a book called Sustainable Marketing, which I'm a quarter of the way through. And you're also a podcast host at Can Marketing Save the Planet? I think just for the purposes of the listeners or viewers, it'd be quite nice if you could tell us just a little bit more about yourself and I guess at the core, what drives you to do what you do?
So I guess, as you say, I am the Marketing Director of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. I've been working in various marketing roles, mainly proposition development throughout my career before I came to CIM. And then more recently having to kind of write the book. In terms of the book came about because myself and my co-authors were moaning a lot about our own profession and calling out our own profession in line with sustainability and everything that was happening, with the planet. And we thought, instead of moaning about it, let's write a book about it and do something about it. So Sustainable Marketing was born from that. And from there, it's kind of snowballed really, because we decided once we launched the book, we wanted to keep the conversation going as opposed to launching a book and that's it. Because as you probably know, being in this world, it's exceptionally complex and there's so much to get your head around. It can be quite overwhelming at times. So myself and Michelle Carville, my co-author, we launched Can Marketing Save the Planet podcast, where we delve into everything that marketers need to know around sustainability and what they can do to try and change and drive a more sustainable future through business. So that combined has then also fed directly back into the work I did at CIM, because sustainable transformation is real and it's something that every business has to get on board with. So I'm currently in the process of building a sustainable transformation course. We have a sustainable marketer course. We're looking at running sustainability through our professional qualifications here at CIM. And, we too are writing about it and looking at the bigger issues and the bigger, wider, broader perspective in terms of what marketing's role is in all this. So everything's kind of going into one another quite nicely in that respect. It becomes quite all-consuming. I'm sure you feel the same in that respect.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this before. I think once you kind of peel back and see things, it's very difficult to unsee them. And I think, luckily, because I think it's a positive thing, that's happening to a lot of people just now. It's snowballing and people are becoming aware of just how severe things are. And I think the first time I came across you was actually through your book, which is amazing, because I came across the book on LinkedIn and I ordered it and then I reached out to you. Just before we get into the questions, where is the best place for people to buy the book?
The book is available everywhere. It came out in January of this year, which was really timely. I don't think even we could have predicted how timely the release of that book was when we started writing it back in 2020 and researching it prior to that. Yeah. But you can buy it in all the usual independent bookshops. You can buy it from Bloomsbury, and obviously you can buy it from the big behemoth that is Amazon. But we tend to try and drive people down to their independent booksellers online. It's available everywhere. It launched in the UK in January. It's also launched in the States and it launched in Australia, so it's available across the world as well.
Amazing. So it was one of the things I wanted to dig into first. It aligns with the topic of the title of your podcast, which is Can Marketing Save the Planet? And I think it's just such a massive subject, and it's an interesting one because people perceive marketing's main function really is to grow businesses and to make money for businesses and brands. What I'm interested to ask you is, how much of a fundamental role does business and do business owners play in solving some of the big challenges that we face as a planet, as humanity, and how does marketing, I guess feed into that? But I think if we start with business, what role does that play in tackling some of this stuff?
I think, you know, the fact is that whether business likes it or not, it's kind of been forced to take the lead on this, because I mean, it is a collective effort, as you know. It's about governments taking action, it's about individuals taking action in what they do, and it's about business taking action. And without all three of those parts coming together, we won't make the progress we need. But within the center of that, I think business is absolutely having to take the lead, and that was kind of came to sort of the forefront when I was looking at Edelman's Trust Barometer from sort of 2019 through to the latest one in 2020. And probably something like, was it in 2021, 68% of respondents believe that CEOs should be, you know, stepping in to fix societal issues when governments aren't, because governments are very slow to react and do things, you know. And nearly all of the respondents believe that CEOs should be leading on societal issues, basically, and taking those steps. So that kind of then started to unpack other questions, which is why is business being seen as taking the lead? What can business do? And that's when marketing came into play, and that's when we started to question what we do within business as marketers. And you know, marketing's always been seen as, the debate just rumbles on, that it's the department that, well, they call it the colouring in department. I don't even think it's that anymore. I think it's, you know, it's borderlining on, it's being seen as worse, you know. And it's the area that sells you stuff, and it's generally aligned to advertising and selling you stuff, and selling you stuff ultimately you probably don't need or don't want to a degree. And I think we've developed this really unhealthy relationship with consumption and needing to own things and buy lots of things. And that's when we started calling it out, because from as authors of the book and as marketers ourselves and as CIM, we've always said marketing isn't solely about advertising and selling stuff. That is one tiny part of what marketing's remit and capability is. If you unpack the rest of it, you know, it's brand, it's strategy, it's communication, it's proposition development. It's huge, you know, and we at CIM, we've always said it goes so much further back than simply the bit at the end where you advertise something and sell people something. So, you know, businesses have to start taking the lead in driving the change, because ultimately we're shaping the behaviours in society. And I think in the last 50 years, we've driven consumption to these levels. We now have to do something about it.
Yeah, no, I think well, you kind of know my opinions already on this, but I would completely agree. I think communications from a marketing perspective are really just the pointy end of the stick. It's one string to the bow of a very broad and deep set of component parts that make up marketing. Another question for you, purpose. So something we speak a lot about, and I think is a very hot topic just now, with purpose washing and greenwashing going on, and who knows what else companies are getting up to. But how does purpose for you fit into the marketing mix? How important is it to really dig a bit deeper about your purpose as a business owner, and what role does that play?
I think, you know, when it comes to brand, it's kind of effectively translating the purpose and the value proposition of what your organization stands for. I think it's moved on so much from brand being products you sell and the logos that your company has, and those organizations that are doing good business, their purpose and how their customers or people or consumers or whatever you want to call them, I just call them people, that's a relationship with trust and loyalty, and it goes beyond just the products and services that, you know, that you're selling as an organization. And as you say, purpose has become a bit of a buzzword, and then you've got all the different types of washing that go, you know, from there's sports washing, there's finance washing. I mean, if nothing else, and I argued this in a debate at the House of Commons, marketing doesn't help itself because it's constantly making up terms and creating new brands for itself and new identities and new job roles, So we probably, every time I get asked, what is the value of marketing and why do people not understand what it does? It's because we're constantly in an identity crisis as a profession, and we're constantly changing what we call ourselves and how we do things. So I think when it comes to purpose, it's really, it's that relationship based on trust. What is your organization here for? And I think it's about transparency. I think what we've come to through doing the podcast is it's not about saying everything you're good at in terms of sustainability and what you're doing sustainable. I think people would appreciate it more if brands were just transparent, because there is no pure 100% sustainable brand out there. Even Patagonia, who are leading the way, call themselves out because their products still release plastic through microfibers into the ocean through washing machines. So I think there's this transparency, but it's swung the other way, and I've had a lot of debates and conversations recently about calling out purpose washing and all of these different things, and greenwashing has almost got some brands scared to even talk about at all what they're doing in case they get called out for it. But I think if you have that level of transparency where you go, we're not 100% sustainable, but we are making every effort, and this is what we are going to do, and this is what we are currently doing. I think that hopefully that's where marketers have this absolute opportunity, to go back to the core of the brand and what is your brand and what does it stand? Why are you here? And one really sort of powerful question that we've asked, which gets quite a mixed response depending on who your company is would the world care if your company shut down tomorrow? Because there is a lot of companies out there that if your product ceased to exist tomorrow, it would probably be better for the world.
Yeah. Wow.
That's quite a scary question, isn't it? If you go, and I there are some brands that spring to mind, fast food and fizzy drink companies and people like that. It's like, if they disappeared tomorrow, what would the world really lose? I think those questions we've got to start asking ourselves.
Yeah, totally. And obviously we, with our work that we do with brand strategy, it's all very similar. And I do agree with you. We don't make our lives easy trying to reinvent the wheel consistently just to be on trend or to be fashionable, or actually just to be able to sell something that's shiny to a business. We look at, and you'll have seen loads of these, we look at brand guidelines or strategy documents that actually, if you stripped out the 65 pages of buzzwords, fluff, and the 10 different ways to say what your proposition is, values, tone of voice, personality, there's actually nothing of any substance there. And something we're working really hard on is to equip businesses. Really what we try to do is equip businesses with a cohesive set of guidelines to make decisions from. That's really it. Do you live by this? And how do we communicate that? If you don't, let's just not add it in. Really interesting.
I think also another thing is that the kite has kind of, and they're not well marketed or communicated, but the UN Sustainable Development Goals, yes, there are 17 and there's something like 174 sub targets under there. So you can't go into that and have a look, you'd be like, no. But I think there's two on there, one being about sustainable societies and helping to build and deliver sustainable societies. I think every single business should be aligning to that as a minimum. And the second one I think companies need to align to as an absolute bare minimum is responsible production and consumption. And I think, those two, I think they're number 11 and 12. They absolutely, if you are going to do anything with your strategy, is aligned to that. And, the other thing around strategy is the stakeholder chain has changed. It's no longer, shareholders, it's investors, it's employees. In fact, Edelman's spring update said employees are now seen as the most important part of the stakeholder chain, and it's customers. And because the weighting has changed, you have to think about all of those various elements of the stakeholder chain in your strategy now, because It's no longer about giving money back to those people at the top table who have a vested interest, because your consumers, and if you believe everything the reports are telling us, is consumers want more sustainable products. I think we could probably have a really lengthy debate on the fact that they're more expensive and it's almost becoming a bit elitist, and is, what you want and what you can actually afford are two different things, to be fair. You've got investors who are saying, we want to see your sustainable goals if we're going to actually and your sustainable agenda, if we're going to invest any money in you. And sustainable finance is a real thing now, and there's those companies that are saying absolutely won't invest in you, and then you've got employees who are saying we don't want to work for brands that don't live aligned to our values. So it's all moving in the right direction. It's just we've got to pick up the pace, haven't we, in terms of timelines.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So on that note, what do marketers, I want to say need to do, but what can marketers do to accelerate this change or drive this change?
I think the one thing is educate yourself first and foremost. 100% educate yourself, and by doing the podcast, which we've started off, I think we've recorded probably 30 of them there, so we're well aligned, and every podcast we do, we learn something new, and it's whether that's a different way of thinking, whether that's about a new type of packaging, whether that is circular economy. I mean, circular economy for me is one of the biggest opportunities for marketers to grab hold of. I mean, how exciting is it to think of brand new ways of doing stuff, and how they go back through society. I think it's incredible. If you're a marketer who's full of ideas and innovation and wants to, we talk about innovation all the time, this is where we can really innovate as a department. But I think it's about educating yourself, understanding what's happening. I don't think many people, as you've said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So educate yourself first and foremost. And I think, we said it at the beginning of our book that there is no one better placed to affect change than a responsible, educated and aware marketer. I think we've got to start educating ourselves on every level, but as marketing, if we're driving change and we want to be at the front and take the lead on the strategy and the brand, and be able to turn around and say to our board of directors, we're not saying that because that is fundamentally going to get us into trouble, or they'll pick us up on all of these other things when it comes to sustainability, or we need to think about the circular economy like this, or we need to repackage our products and think of the end of life like that. Then that's where marketers, that's what they need to start doing. Ask questions as well. Start asking questions. I think we posed some really interesting questions when we were writing a talk we were doing, which is, what are you really doing? If you're measuring something with your CSR or your ESG, when was the last time you actually did something on that list? Because so many companies are probably reporting or talking about it, but are they really using what's in those reports? Because they generally, like your strategy document at the start of the year, get put in the drawer, don't they, or in the cloud and left there. But yeah, number one thing, educate yourself.
I think that's amazing, and the word I use a lot is humility. Like, I think it's really important as marketers for us to have a sense of humility, and not to think we know everything, because a lot of marketers do, but actually what you said earlier kind of ties in about what marketing is and how broad it is. Like, that really plays into education and having humility and just being willing to ask questions and being willing to pull in people who are experts and all that sort of stuff. I think that's really powerful.
All the information's out there as well, isn't it? There's your podcast that you're doing now, there's our podcast, there's websites that explain it all really, really easily, so you can understand it. I'd also say don't go in and go, right, we're going to tackle sustainability as a whole, because you'll just go down, you'll fall into a big hole of despair, quite frankly, because it is huge. But take it on piece by piece and accept that as an organization, you're probably going to have to take a hit on your profits, but you're either going to take a hit now or you're not going to exist in 5 years' time. And if we don't change, none of us are really going to be around. It sounds so dramatic when I say it, but it's true, you know. If everything is happening as it's starting to, then yeah, we don't have enough time. So we need to change now. But with that, you know, it's really exciting. It's no longer set. I mean, it must be boring if all you're doing is screwing tops on toothpaste, you know, and that's essentially advertising stuff to sell the same stuff which doesn't last, so people buy more of it. I think, you know, and also where can you realign your budget, you know, instead of going in, putting it into ads on Facebook and social media, where can you redirect that money into your product and your packaging and your end of life, and start thinking differently about things like subscription and leasing and you know, not owning stuff, I mean, and repairing and reusing. But yeah, I would love to not ever own anything, I think, because it's a real headache if you want to try and sell it or get rid of it. I'd just love to not own a house, because it's a real pain. It keeps you trapped, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's these principles, these guidelines that we've been given as you grow up, and this is how you do things, this is what you should do. It's just fascinating that it's changing, and I agree. I think there's a lot of opportunity as well that comes out of this to take action. That probably leads on to my next question, bit of a wide net question, but what are the opportunities that exist around this whole problem, and what are some of the key challenges?
I think the challenges, as we've talked about, are the complexity of it. You know, it's you've got understanding your carbon footprint so how are you sustainable in the products and services that and beyond those outside externally, and how are you sustainable as a business yourself? They're big meaty topics, they're really hard to get your head around. And then you've got your challenges around what do you start with first, you know, where do you even begin on this journey? And I think, as I said, we're developing a 4-day sustainable transformation course which takes businesses, it's designed to take businesses through everything they need to know, from circular economy to supply chain to modern day slavery to end of life of products and packaging and all of these things, and carbon literacy. And we're partnering with the Carbon Literacy Project so you can become carbon literate at the end of it. And we've developed this because we know the challenges are there, and I think if you walk in and look at them, most people go, first of all, the target is 10-15 years away, it's not my problem. Well, it is. Or they go, this is hugely complex and leadership are never going to buy into this. How on earth do we even get this on their radars and on the strategy? I think the opportunities are, as we've spoken about, the chance to innovate and think differently and try new things. And I think that's huge. And for marketing to take back what it is and what as a function and what it should be, which is, you know, feeding into the strategy, making sure that protecting brand reputation. You know, in the last 18 months, from a CIM perspective, we have seen, yes, digital is still what sells in terms of courses and training and qualifications, but there's been a huge spike in brand reputation and strategy and communication. How do we start communicating differently? And I think that's the opportunity there, is to and save the planet. If we're being like huge, if our goal is really huge, you know, can marketing save the planet and stop destroying it? Because we've got to use more social marketing to change behaviours, which is again another opportunity. Social marketing, look what marketing's done for smoking and obesity in terms of raising awareness and trying to get people to do things differently. So yeah, there's a whole host of challenges, but I think equally exciting. There's so many opportunities. I think it's a really exciting time to be a marketer.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the questions I was going to ask, just picked up on something you said earlier. Any advice for marketers trying to take ideas, broader ideas, more challenging ideas, to the boardroom, to other stakeholders, or to businesses that might be concerned about pushback, resistance, any tips? Because I think there's a lot here about that humility, but also having the confidence to take these things forward.
In terms of understanding what other organisations are doing and what's happening, and don't mean just your direct competition. I think there's a lot of good practice out there, and it would seem in this sustainable world and network, I don't know if you've experienced the same thing, people are willing to share best practice and share what they're doing. So go out there and start having conversations on it. I think get the facts, and obviously the age-old debate of finance versus marketing. Get the case built for a strong business case, built for change and built for investing in innovation, and take that. And I think ultimately it's about getting buy-in through the organization. So how are you going to communicate what you're doing internally and externally as well? Because I think it's equally as important that you tell everyone within your business, and that's where marketing also needs to lead, on what your purpose is and what the strategy is and how you get there. And I think, if you keep pushing on leadership and they're not going to buy in, I would say as a marketer, take your voice away and go somewhere else, because ultimately that organization won't be around if it doesn't start to drive change.
And I think, like you said earlier, the good acid test is to ask the tough questions and leave space for responses to come back. And I think that's a really good measure. And then you can go away and build your case and build the strategy and the rationale. But I think the response to those tough questions is very telling.
I think also, there's enough data and evidence and reports out there to say, look, this is what our customers want. And ultimately, marketing is the voice of the customer. If you take it all the way back to that, this is what customers want. They want more sustainable brands. They want brands who are going to take responsibility. But also, if you're speaking to finance, investment, if we want investment, then we have to do something about this. Otherwise, we are going to lose out. And I think that's where you can take that conversation and work more closely. I'd say, marketing and finance have always been, marketing's been seen as the function that spends the money. Finance is the function that doesn't want to spend the money, it wants to make the money. But I'd say marketing and finance have to have a better relationship. And I think if ultimately break down those silos, if they exist within your organization, and start having the conversation, really open conversation about what's happening in the world, because you can't get away from it, can you? As in, you can't get away from what's happening. It's everywhere, and it's in the news headlines all the time. It's all over social media. So they've got to listen at some point, you'd hope, or like I say, take the voice away.
Yeah, and I think even just picking up on something you said earlier as well, I think building strategies from the inside out, collaboratively from the outset, so getting a good cross-range of cross-section of stakeholders involved is so critical to avoid what you just mentioned, which was marketers. Here's the marketers over here spending all our money, no idea what they're up to. Like, you need to nip that in the bud really early on to get that buy-in, which allows challenging ideas to actually happen, because people who might resist to it feel like they've been part of building it.
And I think as marketers, we need to be commercial in our thinking, because ultimately, there's members of your audience within your business that will want to understand that and what's it going to, deliver back to the business. I mean, profits, people, planet, profit, people, whichever way you put them in order. I think no one's saying that making a profit is bad. It's how you do it. And I think that's what's got us to where we are. How businesses today in the last 50 years, which is called the Great Acceleration, how some businesses have made money has been really questionable if you strip it back and, in terms of the products and the way they go to market. I think how you do it is what is the key primary objective in driving a sustainable future. You can make money on it. No one's saying you can't make money, but if you are going to change how you do stuff, then I think it's only going to take one kind of disruptive way of doing things. And there's examples, isn't there? Digital cameras versus film, and those organizations didn't change. Smartphones were a massive change and disruptor. Streaming versus video, was a massive disruptor. You know, those will start coming, because those businesses that are thinking about it now, they're going to disrupt. And I think that's a good thing, because we do need to drive the change. So yeah, I'd say marketing is absolutely at the forefront.
And I think just on that point, I'm sure I heard there was a statistic, I don't know where it came from, unfortunately, but something like 60% of the world's leading organizations will be replaced with disruptors within the next 10 years or something, which is an incredible statistic. It just shows you the amount of change that needs to happen and the opportunity that comes from people who get on board with that.
Yeah, and I think is it Biden who said that corporations need to be completely redefined as what is your purpose in society.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that's a really interesting time. I recently interviewed the CEO of the UK Sustainable Investment Finance Association, and it was such a great conversation. You know, the way they're looking at sustainable finance and pensions and where you invest your money and green taxes and all of this stuff. I got quite excited about finance for the first time in my life, you know, in terms of they're thinking like marketers. They're thinking much more broadly than the metrics and the graphs and the history of what we've made money on. And that is, you know, exactly where we need to be heading. And if we can break down those silos internally, I think that's a really, really good positive move forward. But we shall see, won't we?
Yeah, no, we shall. One last question.
Yeah.
Favorite chapter in the book?
My favorite chapter in the book?
Yeah.
I'll answer this of the chapters I wrote. My favorite chapter, because I learned something on every part which blew my mind or made me just want to cry or bounce around thinking this is amazing. But I would say my favorite chapter to research and write was the one on plastic. I think there was some unbelievable facts that came out of that, but then the innovation of, you know, we've got to move away from plastic for all of the reasons we know, but also the fact that, again, this is where we kind of get tipped either into that all plastic is bad and it all has to go. It doesn't. Not all plastic is bad. And I think this is again where we go back to that educate yourself piece. You know, we do need plastic for certain things. It is better in terms of, you know, medical products and food. Some food needs to be wrapped and secured for, you know, for health and safety reasons. What we don't need is single-use plastic, and I don't think anything should be single-use. When you have a reusable product, I listed all the single-use plastic that I could think of, and there is a reusable item for everything on there. So why on earth do we even have it? It's crazy. And the fact that people buy water when it's free out of a tap, if you're in a country that has drinkable tap water.
Yeah.
It's insane, isn't it? That's the power of marketing, though, isn't it? That is the absolute power of marketing. It can make you buy something you can get for free, which is staggering. And now marketing needs to go, we need to now change your behaviors and get you thinking differently. So yeah, I'd say my favorite chapter was plastic. Okay. It was very eye-opening.
Brilliant. Cool. Well, I think that, look, Gemma, this has been amazing. I'm pretty sure people will really enjoy this. I think there's a loads of important topics we covered there. I just wanted to ask how people can get in touch, find out more about what you do. What's the best way for people to reach out?
So there's multiple places in terms of, you can come through to CIM. We launched a sustainable hub last week. And so you come onto CIM's page and you can click into that. That is where we're ultimately pulling sustainability out as a thing in isolation. And we've got content on there, our webinars, the podcasts we've done, the courses we're doing as we launch them. We'll be announcing our qualifications when they come out on there. And then secondly, you've got canmarketingsafetheplanet.com, which is where Michelle and myself, she's my co-author, that's where all Can Marketing Save the Planet podcasts are. We've got a learning zone, we've got a marketing manifesto, sustainable marketing manifesto, which has got a lot of people signing up to that, a lot of marketers. And on there is a whole host of information, and we regularly update that learning zone with all the really interesting stuff and the stuff that marketers need to know on a very regular basis, because as you say, it's complex, and how do you even know where to start? So I think those two places are absolutely key resources for anyone who wants to start understanding or questioning how they drive a more sustainable future through what they do.
Amazing. Well, I know you're very busy, so for committing time to come on and have a chat, and thanks for coming on.